Orlando Hampton, how's it going, sir?
Fantastic. Glad to be here.
Listen, I like to say that as long as we're on this side of the earth, it's always a great day. So it's a pleasure. Well, let me back up for a second. Thank you for sponsoring this. This is our first face-to-face taping of Coffee Talk. And we actually have a studio audience here. So thank you for the sponsorship between yourself and Afiniti. We are really appreciative.
We appreciate it. The work that NAMIC does is important. It's important work. We're just glad to be a part of it, glad to sponsor it. So glad to be here.
I appreciate you. Ready?
Let's go.
All right. So Orlando, you are the Chief Customer Office for Afiniti. And basically, you've been around Afiniti since, you could arguably say zero to hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. That transformation, that growth comes at, a cost, right? And you've been around to not just watch it, but you've also been a big inspiration, a big portion of that growth. Talk to me about the evolution and more specifically how you evolved in your management and your leadership style to help Afiniti be one of the leaders in the AI space.
It's a great question. Startups are not for everybody. That would be my first take of it. I spent most of my career working for very big corporations. I used to run contact center operations at JP Chase. So I managed outsourcers for Chase. I managed internal centers. We had thousands of employees. There's a certain amount of comfort that comes with working with a big company. When you work at a big company, if you make a mistake and you lose that company $1 million, almost surely nothing will happen. People might say, hey, don't do that again. That was a mistake. Try to do something better. If you do something to earn that company $1 million, $1 million that they did not expect, almost surely nothing will happen. People will say, thank you very much. That was nice. We'll see what you do next year. So there's a certain amount of comfort working at a big company. You feel insulated. When you're working at a startup, if you were to lose $1 million, you personally, everyone would be aware of it. Everyone in the hallways would be like, that's the person, he cost us $1 million. If you were to gain $1 million, everyone would be aware of it. So you feel a lot more at a startup, right? So it's you have to figure out, are you the kind of person that wants to feel it? Do you want to be involved in that way? The evolution for us was an interesting one because when we started the company 15 years ago, we were in the AI space and nobody was in AI. It just wasn't a thing that people talked about. When we would talk about AI, most often people would assume we were talking about robots, that we were going to bring robots in to somehow replace the humans that they had working there. And so when you're selling something and you have no track record, people don't know who you are, there's a certain amount of belief that you have to have in what you're doing that is almost on the borderline of fanaticism. You have to believe it even when other people do not believe it. I tell the story, I worked at JP Chase, I worked on Wall Street, I was at the point in my career where my family knew what that was, right? He works at Chase, he works on Wall Street, right? That was easy answers to what is he doing. When I announced that I was leaving there to go work at a startup, I bet half my family assumed I got fired. They're like, oh, that's nice. We're sure you left JP Chase and Wall Street to go work for a company doing pairing in contact centers, right? Mm-hmm. There's just something that didn't connect for people. It was probably 5 years into my career at Afiniti before people really start saying, oh, I get it. I see why you made this transition, why you did this thing. The evolution in it comes with a couple of things. One, people. So at a startup, everyone has 2 or 3 jobs. There are not very many specialists at a startup. At a big company, when you are hired to write press releases, that's what you do. You write press releases. At a startup, if you're hired to write press releases, you may find yourself writing scripts for customer testimonials. You may find yourself writing marketing pieces. You may be creating decks that we're using in client presentations. So everyone is doing multiple things. 2, sales. Everybody at a startup is in sales. It doesn't actually matter what your role is. You could be technology, you could be HR, you are actively in sales. And when you meet people, you are actively selling what you do and how you do it. and it's built into the fabric of what you're trying to achieve. Three, and this is probably one of the more interesting things for a startup, is you have to be willing to do the work yourself. When you work at a big organization, I was part of this. Like I had 30,000 people as part of my team at JP Morgan Chase. So I had all kinds of people in contact centers all around the world. And I could come up with an idea and then, in essence, outsource that idea to be executed, right? Here's a great idea, and then a team of people would spool up to go and execute this vision. And I would merely judge on whether I was happy with that execution or maybe we should execute it differently. At a startup, ideas are everywhere. Everybody has ideas. It's your ability to execute those ideas, to actually do the work. And so we have had, we've hired lots of executives. Some of them have worked out really well. The ones that have not worked out well are generally people who are more effective with large teams around them and less effective as an independent contributor. So you have to think about that when you're going to like a startup, is you have to be willing to not only create an idea, but like at Afiniti for years, if you came up with a great idea, 90% chance you would own it, right? It wouldn't be that somebody say, oh, that's a great idea for marketing to do it. Be like, Orlando, that's a great marketing idea. Let us know how that works out, and we'll see how it goes.
So in there, I took a few nuggets away. You had to be flexible.
Yes.
You had to be visionary. You had to be willing to roll up your sleeves. And I get that you did all of that as a person. How did you inspire your team members to do the same thing?
This is really interesting. The hardest thing that I've ever done as a manager is push other people to work very, very hard when you yourself are not 100% sure that this is going to work out. It's one thing for you to push yourself at an incredibly hard pace and to put in the extra hours and to do the extra work. But when you're asking other people to do it, and there's some possibility that this doesn't work out, right? Lots of startups fail. Lots of great ideas run out of money. They run out of sponsorship. They can't get off the ground. And you know that this is a possibility, but you're still asking people to do this. It's the hardest thing to do as a manager. For me, my secret in this is I get invested in the people personally. So anyone who has ever worked with me, I would hope that what they would tell you is that Orlando was first interested in me as a person and then interested in the business. And that is the way I always try to approach it. So when I talk to people, if they want advice on their career, I don't think about it first as what's best for the business. I first think about what is best for them. And occasionally that lines up with the business and it's great, but sometimes it does not. And when it doesn't, I'm honest about that. When I talk about that and say, hey, you may have a better opportunity elsewhere. Maybe your opportunity is not here. But the earlier and the more transparent you can be in those discussions, then the better off you're going to be. Because you'll find that your team, they become loyal to you. They become loyal and they say, hey, this is a person that I want to be involved with. And whether I'm working here or I'm working elsewhere, I'll stay in touch with this person for the rest of my life.
And typically, that's not necessarily always going to be because you're a great manager, but they're following you because you're leading. And a lot of times, at least while being in your presence, you're leading by example. All of the things you stated earlier, that you had to be willing to roll up your sleeves, you had to do the countless hours, you had to fly 300 of days out of the year, etc. You were showing that willingness to do that, to contribute in a manner that said, if I can do it, you guys can do it. I may not mandate that you do it, but at least you're watching me do it. So thank you, great answers, right? I want to pivot slightly, still staying in that AI track, because in the not so recent past, there was a tech company, I think it may have been Google, that had an AI algorithm that spit out that a black man was basically synonymous with an ape. And so we know that there's some maturing that needs to go on through the process, right? But when we look at the state of AI and how it's going to mature in corporate America and in our lives in general in the future, and the potential, I don't want to use the word abuse, but we'll put some other adjective in there that says, here's data coming in, it can be skewed, and then there's an output coming out. And it's that skewing that concerns me and it concerns a lot of people, because that's how, if you have an automated system that says who gets approved for a house, a loan, etc.,
Yes.
You're in the AI business. Talk to me about that and help us feel more secure if we are actually going to feel more secure.
Yeah, I have strong opinions in this space, as you might imagine. I will let me first start by saying there's a couple of like real myths that exist in this place. So one, computers are not smarter than humans. I'll just say that full stop. Just to kind of let that sink in for a second. Computers are better than humans at repetitive tasks, right? Things that have to be done over and over. They can tabulate big numbers a lot faster and more precisely than humans. So computers are great at these kind of tasks. However, computers really lack significantly when it comes to any kind of emotional set and reading and interpreting situations. Computers do not interpret situations as well as humans, right? I use the example all the time of if you take a computer and you train this computer to find a cat in a picture, and you show this computer thousands of pictures and said, pick out the pictures with cats. If that computer got that right 80% of the time, that'd be like one of the better computers in the world that has an ability to pick this out. My son is 5. He probably could pick out a cat 95% of the time, right? Just going through. So if you think about the way that humans have evolved over time, so computers are not here to take over humans. First big myth about AI, the computers are coming and they are eventually going to take over your life. I'm not saying computers won't someday move on to these spaces. I am saying that we have been predicting computers are taking over since about the 70s. There were, if you think about the movies, whether they were like Tron or 1984, there were all these movies then of the robots are coming and they eventually are going to take over. So let's start with that. So now when you take a computer and you say, in the case of machine learning, you train a computer on some repetitive task, and that computer then does this task over and over and over. And after a while, some pattern is relevant that the computer will pick up, right? Let me give you an example. People talk about hacking into a computer, hacking into a phone. It's possible for you to hack into a human. And it's actually a scarier form of hacking, right? If you are a fitness person and you have like one of these fitness apps and every day you're diligently putting your food choices into your phone. You just do this every day. It helps you track all the food you're eating. What you realize though is now that computer, your phone, has all this data on you, and data is incredibly valuable. And what happens is there are patterns in that data that are too subtle for even you to know. So after doing this for 3 years, the computer may figure out that, you know what, Charles eats pizza on Friday, but only if he has chicken on Wednesday. Now, you might think of this as an independent choice. You believe every night you're deciding what I'm going to have. But over time, this pattern is consistent and it shows up. So guess what? Now, if I'm the person that owns this app and I have this data, and I have a pizza place that wants to sell you a pizza, it all starts by selling you chicken on Wednesday,
yeah.
right? So, and you never see it coming, right? You never see this idea. So this is the kind of thing that computers are good at. They're great at that kind of thing. But there's lots of things computers aren't good at. Computers have really no emotional response to stuff. Think about autonomous cars. It's all in the news today, right? Autonomous cars are coming and there's going to be no need for drivers. People will just get into these cars and they'll drive themselves. The technology may allow for that to happen, but let me ask you some questions. If you're driving your car today and you have a choice, your brakes are not working, you can plow into the people in front of you, or you can drive off the cliff. Those are your choices. You're going to have to make that decision. But if you have an autonomous car, guess what? Somebody has to tell the car what decision to make. There's no thinking in the car. The car is not going to decide which one of these is the best. Someone has to tell the car. So who gets to tell the car? Does the car manufacturer get to tell the car? Do you get to have a little button in your car that says protect me at all costs? right? Hit this button.
But that is the conversation piece, right? Because
Yeah.
you get to a point where decisions have to be made.
Yes.
What safeguards are being put in place today that says, here's the decision maker, A, and
Yeah.
B, what's the decision that's being made?
So this is where the trick comes. The data that you put in for AI is a big indicator of the results that you're going to get back out. So the power of AI, one of the great things is you think about like these systematic biases. Through AI, you can help to eliminate some of these systematic biases, right? This idea of, hey, if someone sends a resume in and they have an ethnic sounding name, they don't get as many responses as a traditional European sounding name, right? And so you, through AI, could ignore that. You could say, ignore the names. Just look at the resume, right? So you can eliminate what is like a systematic bias. On the flip side, to your point, you could actually create a systematic bias, right? So if the person programming artificial intelligence themselves has some bias, you could actually now create a system that is always biased. Not sometimes biased, but always biased. So that is an incredibly like powerful situation to be in. It starts with diversity, frankly. You need people in the room. You need people in the room programming these systems who have diverse backgrounds, diverse experiences, who can understand things differently. I promise you that when you say software recognizes a black male and thinks of it as an animal, I promise you that's because there weren't enough black males in the training for that particular software. They trained the software on a certain type of person, and then the software came out and said, I've not seen enough of these people. So I think that this is something else. So, what you put into the systems are important. It starts with who was in that room. So I'm a big proponent of getting people in that room, right? So diversity to me is not a charity. It's not like a nice thing to do. It's not, you should be diverse because that's just nice, that's good. It's a distinct business advantage. It is necessary. If you are in a business where you are selling to the general population, you best believe that the people who are making those decisions better look like that general population, or you are going to miss the points. And that's no different whether it's a marketing campaign or whether it's training a neural network, right? So what you put in is important, and you got to have the right people there.
Pivoting just a little. Women in Cable Television, WIC.
Yes.
You're on the global board. National Kidney Foundation, you're on the board. National Association of Multi-Ethnicity and Communication, NAMIC. You're not on the board, however, you're a big contributor. In fact, you're sponsoring this event tonight. Where does this passion come from?
This is really important to me because I'm someone who I believe that opportunity is what often people are missing. They're missing the opportunity. They don't know what they don't know. And I think about, I'm a good example of this actually. So I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I was what you would call a townie for most of my life. So I'm 47 years old. I just turned 47.
Happy birthday.
Kind of keep track of that. Thank you so much. I'm 47 years old, and until I was 24, I had never been on an airplane. I lived in the same city. I had never been on an airplane. I never traveled. I was in Pittsburgh. I went to the University of Pittsburgh, not because I thought that was the best school, but because it was very close to my house. I never considered going anywhere else. So I lived in this space. At the time that I lived there, I remember something like 60% of people in the city had never lived more than 50 miles from the hospital they were born in. Right? This was like a real thing, and I was very much a part of that. And then since then, so from 24 to 47, I have flown all over the world. I've been all over the place. I've done all kind of things. So like when people point somebody out, they say, "Wow, this person has limited experience and limited perspective." I just don't recognize that person. I was that person. I know exactly what they're thinking. And when I think about all the things that I didn't know, you could fill a book with all the things you don't know, but when I think about all the things I didn't know at the time, many of them were because I just hadn't been in those rooms. I hadn't had that kind of experience. I hadn't been in those places. I first got involved with women in cable television. I went to the national show in New York. So I went to Diversity Week. I was actually we had an event at Afiniti. So we were doing, we have a Women in Technology series at Afiniti that I helped to start actually. And so we were at this event, and one of the people speaking at this event said, hey, tomorrow I'm speaking at the Women in Cable Television event. You should come and see. And I said, okay, that's fine, I'll go. And I kind of figured in my mind that there wouldn't be a lot of men there, right? I figure women in cable technology, maybe there's just a few men. Well, I went to this event, there were 1,500 women, and I think there were 3 men. So there was very, very few men. And I suddenly found myself thinking about things that I'd never thought about before. I was like in the crowd thinking, should I have worn a tie? Did I not dress right for this event? I'm like, why am I thinking this kind of thing? And then on the stage, people would say like, ladies, welcome. And I was like, wow, I feel really excluded. Like nobody's talking to me. And then there'd be like something would come up and they'd say, men think like this. And they'd say, there's a man. Why do you think like that? And I like, I don't know. I don't know why we. And I was so moved, right? I was like, this was like an incredible experience. And I start thinking back through my mind. I'm in technology. I've been to so many conferences where there was all men. There was just very few women. And I never thought to like, go up to any of the women at the conference and say, how's it going for you? And, how are things? But there were so many women approaching me saying, why'd you decide to come? We're so glad you're here. This is fantastic. Tell me your story. And I thought, wow, like I really missed this opportunity all this time. So I was so moved by this, I decided I was going to write an article, which I had never done before. I wrote an article and put it on LinkedIn. In my mind, I thought, just the people who know me in my network, they'll read this article and they can kind of share this experience. Well, it took off. It like became this big thing. Lots of people were reading it. It was passing around. And suddenly, and this goes to show you how much ground we need to make up. Like within a week, I had become an expert on women in business. People were reaching out to me, asking me if I knew any women they could hire, if I knew women they could speak. And I thought, how is writing one article put me in this position where suddenly people feel like I'm an expert? But I'm a person who like, that's a challenge. And I said, you know what? I should be an expert. Instead of like telling people like, I'm not an expert, don't come to me, what I should do is do the work and get in and learn more about this. So it became a real passion. So I got so involved in it. I ended up meeting the president of WIC, and I'm now on the global board, and I got connected with NAMIC, and I start going on this path. But it's about opportunity, right? How do I get people in the room, right? How do I get people in a space where they can have these experiences? I'll tell you one more story. I realize I got lots of stories, but this is anybody who's been around me has probably heard me use this before. In the African American community, you go into a barbershop, and it is an amazing scene, right? Everything is happening in the barbershop. The conversations are like brutally transparent. Right, they're controversial. People aren't afraid to like step out on a limb and give some opinion around something. And then there's always one person. There's a guy. He comes into the barbershop and the place lights up. We are so glad that this guy's coming in because now he's gonna have to answer for whatever prediction he made last week, whatever he said. We're like, I am so happy that I'm here. And everybody's face lights up, and this guy's like a master networker. People are thrilled to see him. And what you realize is that guy would be that same guy even if he was at Augusta National. He would walk in and he would be the guy who everybody would be happy to see, everybody's face would light up, except he's not in Augusta National. He's in this barbershop. And he doesn't even realize that this skill, this ability to control the room, this ability to connect with everyone is a very incredibly valuable skill. Instead, he thinks this is just something he's doing as he's dropping off packages at the barbershop. This is some stop along the way. He doesn't see the opportunity. And I sit in that chair and I see it. And I'm like, hey, can I talk to you about doing something different?
Let me ask you on that same thread.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're sort of segueing into where I'm thinking about mentoring and sponsorship.
Yes.
You see this person, they just came into the barbershop.
Yes.
Everybody lights up. They are the MC, they're facilitating conversations, they're answering the questions. In certain companies, they would call that individual, overused term, but a rock star.
Yes.
Right? How do you mentor that rock star away from, and I don't even want to say away from, just to be better,
Yes.
right? And then what separates a person that you would be mentoring, call it this rock star, call him the barbershop wizard, what would allow for that person to go from just a mentee to somebody that you would actually sponsor?
First thing is information. The first thing you have to tell them is that they are a rock star and that there's value in this. You'd be surprised at how many people just don't know that there's value in it. They actually don't know that this is a skill. They think this is just some natural thing. And most often they're like, I don't know, everybody just likes me. And by the way, it's not just at this barbershop. When I leave this barbershop, my next stop is at an office, and all those people are going to be happy to see me. And then I'm going to get to a cleaner's, and all those people are going to be happy to see me. So the first thing is information. The first thing is saying, you have a valuable skill. There is a way for you to monetize this skill and take this to another place. And we should talk about how you can do that. So the first thing you have to do is give the information. Once you have given the information, you have to leave it up to them to see, do they want it? Right? Do I want to take that information and go somewhere with it? So, I mean, I'm constantly someone who is like reaching out to people in this capacity. Surprisingly, what you'll see is that lots of people never follow up with you. They're like, great, thank you. Glad to know I'm a rock star. See you next time, right? But some people, they say, you plant that seed with them, and the next time you see them, they say, hey, tell me about this now. Tell me about some other things that you think I could do, or where are other places you can apply it. So they have to meet you halfway, right? So this is part of, you can't want something for someone else more than they want it for themselves.
Correct.
Right? It's a very valuable thing to understand. And for those of us who have mentored people and supported people, you have definitely ran into this case at some point in your career, where you found that you wanted it more for the person than they wanted it for themselves. And that is a very frustrating situation to be in. So you have to give them the information, see if they want it, and if they want it, that's where you have your people you can work with. That's how you drill down where you want to go. The next piece of this, though, is connecting them, putting them in different places, right? So you can see the difference between like, hey, you know this thing you got working in the barbershop is working really well? Great. I'm going to take you to the bar at the Ritz-Carlton, and we're just going to do the same thing. But the difference is, the people at this bar at the Ritz-Carlton who all like you, these are different people, right? They're all like, wow, that's interesting. I'm in pharmaceutical sales. That guy seems like somebody who could be walking in a doctor's office selling things. Like, wow, I'm in real estate. That seems like the kind of guy who could be selling. So now it's putting them in places where they can actually expand their own networks. They can see those skills in action. And a lot of times that is very easy to do, right? It's just simply moving somebody from a space, putting them in another space, and they immediately can kind of see those things.
At that point, are you moving towards mentorship into sponsorship? Because it seems like you're putting more investment in them than just saying, hey, you know what, I'm giving you some information. We're going to see if you act on it. If you do, great. Your individual life, your career starts to expand. What point does it transition from mentoring into something that a person that you're actually sponsoring?
For me, the difference, sponsorship is really, you are in the room advocating for this person, right? Mentorship is, you're coming, you're talking, you're working out your career goals, your life goals, you're thinking about the decisions that you're making. Sponsorship means you're actually in the room saying, hey, have we considered Charles? Did we think about Charles in this role? What are we doing in that, right? And there's a difference between mentorship and sponsorship, and it's good to have both, right? You want mentors, but you need sponsors. You need people who are actually out there in those rooms and actually speaking out on your behalf, right? So you have to find a way to separate between the two. For me, it's impossible to be a mentor to everyone. So sometimes that's all you can do. You can give them the information, you can put them in the space, you can see what they can do, and if they really want it, they will go after it, and they'll meet you there. And what I do is I'm constantly doing that, right? So I'm constantly putting people in positions, right? Like, I mean, this is a clear example of this, right? We've done all these coffee talks, right, virtually. I was supposed to do this 9 months ago, and I kept finding ways to put it off until we could get clear to COVID protocols enough to actually get in a room. Because for me, the benefit of this message is, yes, we'll get the coffee talk, we'll get the message out there. But what I really enjoy is the people in the room and what's happening as people are getting to know each other, right? What's happening as people are talking and those light bulbs are coming on of, oh, I'm interested in this. I see this kind of thing. So to me, that's what I'm most excited about. I'm always pushing that.
I had an opportunity to talk to a few people who probably are closer to you in the business world, and then also some individuals who you may mentor and in some cases advocate in a sponsor from a sponsor perspective. And when I asked them, I said, talk to me, if we were talking about Orlando from the context of a basketball player, what position would he, play and why? And almost to a person, they all said a point guard. Okay, so I said, okay, point guard, why? And they said, well, not just your atypical point guard, because most point guards will do some level of assist, some level of scoring, facilitating, etc. They said, but the one thing to and not to a fault, but to your credit, is that you could go through a game, score 20 points, have 20 assists and have 0 points and be perfectly happy.
Yes.
Explain that to me.
I prefer it. I'm somebody who enjoys setting other people up, right? Putting people in positions where they can be successful. I find that I am most effective. You can multiply my effectiveness by the success of the people around me, right? So, a great philosopher, Jay-Z, once said that we measure success by the number of successful people around us, right? If you are the only successful person in your crew, don't call yourself successful because everybody else is struggling, right? And so it's the people around you that represent you, right? And I like to see those people winning. And when those people are winning, I'm winning, right? I'm winning because those people are doing those things. So I always approach this with, reciprocity is like a problem in networking and mentorship, right? And what I mean by that is people say, I did this for you, and I expect you to do this for me, right? So I'm doing this thing for you, now I'm 1 favor in, and wait, you called on me to do something else? That's 2 favors for me, right? When are these favors going to start to come back? I actually find that you are much better off never keeping score and just constantly doing things.
Yep.
Constantly doing things for other people. Dig your well before you're thirsty. Do not start building your network when you need it, right? Do not wake up one day and say, I really need to know a good real estate person. I should start networking with real estate people. No, network all the time, and someone in your network will know a great real estate person, right? So always do this. Always put people in positions to win. Never consider whether or not you are going to win from this or whether this is going to come back to you. And if you do that, the winning just comes back to you, right? For me, my biggest successes are, in fact, the people that I put in position to be successful. And here's a little cheat code. If you put enough people in positions to be successful, when they become successful, you have created a revenue stream for yourself of simply knowing other people. I'm going to say that again because that's something we don't talk about a lot. I meet people in my business every day whose most valuable asset is that they know other people. They themselves may not be the person, but they know another person. And that becomes a very valuable asset. If you know lots of people and you can put people together, That's very valuable in a business sense because people are constantly trying to figure out, how do I connect to this person? And if you become someone who they say, hey, this is a person I want in my network because his network itself is so expansive. He knows so many people. He can plug me into other places. So a cheat code is when you have lots of people that you sponsored, lots of people that you put in position, suddenly just the fact that you know so many other people is in itself lucrative. I have people reaching out to me all the time saying, do you know this person? Right? Is there, can I talk to you about doing business with us so that I also can know this person? And many times I will know that person for no other reason besides that I just know them, right? I saw them somewhere and thought, that's a person I want to know, and I want to invest in this person and see them be successful.
Well, we are at time. Orlando, as always, I want to thank you. Once again, I want to thank you for the sponsorship, for being a part of Coffee Talk series. I know, like we said, we were supposed to have this months ago, but I prefer this setting than looking at a computer screen and saying, hey, Orlando, how's it going? Is everything good? Let's go. So once again, we appreciate you, and thanks again.
Thank you, man.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.